It didn't come from the tabloids. Not this time. It didn't arrive with paparazzi flashbulbs or through the whispery corridors of royal gossip blogs. There was no front-page scandal screaming her name. In fact, she hadn't spoken publicly in years. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And yet, on a quiet Monday morning, as Prince Harry sat once again in a London courtroom, battling to defend his privacy, his reputation, and, perhaps most of all, his narrative, the name he hadn't dared to speak out loud became the center of everything: Chelsy Davy. A woman the British public once knew only as the Zimbabwean-born law student with golden hair and a quiet smile. She'd stood beside Harry through some of his most turbulent years, before Meghan, before Spare, before the war against the press. Now she wasn't sitting beside him. She was staring him down, and she was doing it from the other side of the courtroom. Think about that for a moment. A man who spent the last 3 years battling the tabloid media for violating his privacy is now being dragged into a new legal crisis, not by a journalist, not by a royal biographer, but by a woman who used to be part of his inner world, someone who had seen it all, stayed quiet, and then, one day, decided that enough was enough. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Because in Harry's carefully crafted story, the one that's played out across books, interviews, docuseries, and court testimonies, Chelsy was the past, a memory, a footnote, a good person who didn't want the life. That's how he described her. That's how he framed it. But people don't stay footnotes forever. And in Chelsy's case, it seems she no longer wants to be edited out. Now, as the prince faces his third and final legal battle against the British tabloid press, she has entered the arena with something far more disruptive than a paparazzi photo or a misquoted headline about how of defamation against him. And that changes everything. Because for the first time since this saga began, since Harry declared war on the media, fled the royal machine, and became the world's most famous privacy crusader, he's no longer just the plaintiff, he's also the accused. The lines are no longer clean. The moral high ground, well, it's not quite so stable anymore, especially if Chelsy Davy has the receipts. And sources say she does. But let's back up for a second, because the obvious question is this: why now? Why, after more than a decade of silence, would Chelsy Davy step forward? What would drive her to break ranks, not just with Prince Harry, but potentially with the entire royal machine? The answer isn't simple, but it may lie in a sequence of overlooked details, a handful of barely noticed interviews, a line or two in Spare that didn't mention her name but carried her shadow, and a pattern, one that's haunted Harry's exes for years, of being erased, rewritten, or quietly scapegoated in service of a larger story. You see, there's a difference between being forgotten and being misremembered. And if what we've uncovered is true, if Chelsy's legal argument holds, then Prince Harry may have crossed a very thin, very dangerous line between privacy and narrative manipulation. He may have rewritten the past in a way that cost someone else their peace, and that's where this story begins to shift. Because this isn't just a court case anymore. It's a reckoning. One that could reveal more about Harry's motives than any cross-examination ever intended. And that's what makes this story so urgent, so relevant, right now. Not 5 years ago, not in hindsight, but today. Because we're not just watching a prince fight for privacy. We're watching a prince face the consequences of the story he's been telling, and maybe, just maybe, of the truths he's left out. Let's talk about timing. It's no accident that Chelsy's legal threat emerged during the most sensitive phase of Harry's legal campaign. This third case, the final of his major lawsuits against the UK tabloids, is the cornerstone of his mission. It's the one where his team believes they can prove not just negligence, but conspiracy. Wiretapping, blagging, illegal surveillance, the whole sordid machinery of tabloid intrusion laid bare. That's what Harry came back to London to expose. And yet, on the very first day of this climactic battle, someone else entered the frame, a woman he hadn't seen in years. Not since his wedding. Not since the memoir. Not since he called her too good for this madness. That's what he said. Too good. Too private. Too decent for the royal life. But what if that wasn't the full story? What if Chelsy Davy wasn't too good for royal life, but simply too smart to be used by it? There's an irony here. A subtle one, but it matters. Prince Harry's entire legal argument rests on the idea that the press constructed false narratives to sell a story, that the tabloids didn't just report events, they shaped them, weaponized them, manipulated public perception for clicks and circulation. But what if the person making that claim is doing the same thing? What if, in trying to defend his image, he distorted someone else's? In court filings leaked last week, Chelsy's team made a pointed allegation that the Duke of Sussex defamed her by implication, by creating a fictionalized composite of a past girlfriend and seeding it with just enough detail for the public to connect the dots. No name. No direct accusation, but a character so close to her lived experience, so parallel to private conversations they once had, that she believes it was unmistakably her. And the damage? Profound. Because in the court of public opinion, it only takes one Reddit thread, one viral TikTok theory, one Daily Mail sidebar. Suddenly, you're not just the ex-girlfriend, you're the villain in someone else's hero's journey, the bitter, clingy one, the one who didn't support him, the one who wanted the spotlight, the one who was always jealous of Meghan. And that's where this gets dark. Because Chelsy Davy never asked for the spotlight, she famously refused it. She turned down the chance to become a duchess. She left quietly, built a life outside of royal orbit, and asked for nothing. Not money, not attention, not status. But silence doesn't protect you forever, especially when your story gets rewritten. And now, years later, as Prince Harry stands before a British judge, arguing that he has been mischaracterized by the press, he finds himself facing a very uncomfortable parallel. He's not the only one who feels misrepresented. So now, the question becomes, what exactly did he say? What stories did he tell that blurred the line between memoir and manipulation? What unnamed anecdotes in Spare sparked thousands of forum comments, podcasts, and reaction videos pointing fingers at Chelsy Davy? And what happens when she walks into court, stands under oath, and says, "That was me, and it wasn't true"? Because here's the thing, you can sue a newspaper. You can drag a journalist through discovery. But what do you do when the ghost from your past refuses to stay silent? What happens when she turns around and sues you? This is where things begin to splinter, because the British press, normally united in their disdain for Harry, suddenly finds itself caught between two narratives. On one hand, they want to exploit Chelsy's legal move, frame it as betrayal. A former lover, sabotaging Harry's noble quest. On the other hand, her case echoes their long-standing complaint that Harry wants control of the narrative, not just justice, that he wants to choose which truths get told and which get buried. And the irony of that, it's too rich for them to ignore. For the royal family, it's no less complicated. Chelsy Davy was once a favorite among the older royals. Princess Anne liked her. Charles respected her. Even Camilla was said to believe Chelsy was the right kind of tough. And now, she may be the woman who undermines the one person the monarchy cannot afford to lose complete control over. The spare, who won't go quietly. The rebel, whose crusade may be cracking. The son, whose truth may have crossed a line. But what Chelsy Davy is about to reveal isn't just a personal account. It's something more, something buried, something protected, something that, if exposed, could unravel more than just Harry's case. Because if she's telling the truth, then someone else is lying. And that someone may be wearing a crown.
So, what exactly did she find?
That's the part no one, not the press, not Harry's legal team, not even the courtroom sketch artists, seems able to pin down completely. But what we do know is this. The first sign that something was off didn't come from Buckingham Palace. It came from a private London legal firm with no royal ties, no history of tabloid lawsuits, and until now, no involvement in the larger privacy war Harry's been waging. An email. Quiet. Precise. Sent to Harry's lawyers with a subject line that, at first glance, might have seemed like a routine witness concern. Notice of potential third-party legal complication. 8 carefully neutral words, but the attachment? That's where everything changed. Inside was a formal legal notice, a defamation claim in draft form, and the name at the top, typed in crisp, unambiguous black and white, was Chelsy Davy. Imagine being in that room. Imagine the moment Prince Harry's counsel, who had been preparing to accuse the British press of systemic abuse, saw that one name and realized the battlefield had shifted, because this wasn't a surprise witness.
This was a bomb waiting to go off, but maybe we should have seen it coming.
There were small signs, whispers, a single tabloid blind item that hinted at an ex-flame reconsidering her silence, a mysterious uptick in traffic to old Chelsy Davy interviews on YouTube. And then there was that podcast episode, quietly deleted, quietly reposted elsewhere, where an anonymous former girlfriend of a royal-adjacent figure described feeling used as a fictional decoy in a best-selling memoir. No name, no details. But it was enough to make certain listeners lean in a little closer, enough to prompt legal observers to start asking uncomfortable questions, and perhaps enough to provoke Chelsy herself into action. Because make no mistake, this wasn't reactive, it wasn't impulsive, it was calculated, deliberate, filed with precision, backed by evidence, and, most critically, timed to coincide with Harry's most vulnerable legal moment. A moment where all eyes were on him, and suddenly, none of them were for the reason he wanted. Now, before we go further, let's ask the question Harry's team must have asked themselves the second they read her name.
Why would Chelsy do this? After all, she's stayed quiet for years.
Even when the paparazzi hounded her in her 20s, even when the tabloids called her too wild for the firm, even when royal commentators labeled her the one who couldn't handle the pressure, she took it silently. She built a jewelry business, got married, became a mother. She moved on. And yet now, over a decade since their last real public appearance, she's stepping into the one arena that guarantees headlines. A courtroom. But not as a witness, as an adversary. So why? The answer, according to one insider, may lie in the precise wording of Harry's memoir and what it implies. Not just what it says, what it suggests. Because in the world of reputational law, implication is everything. And Chelsy, by all accounts, believes Harry crossed a line, not by telling his truth, but by editing hers. Let's look at the context. In Spare, Harry refers to a past girlfriend, not by name, but with enough emotional detail to paint a vivid picture. A woman who couldn't support him, who wasn't strong enough to stand the heat of royal life, who made him feel abandoned when he needed her most. On its face, it seems like standard memoir fare.
But, to people who knew the timeline, who knew their relationship,
And how it ended?
It wasn't vague at all.
It was a direct line to Chelsy. And once the public made that connection, which didn't take long, everything she had worked to protect fell under suspicion. Old photos resurfaced. Forums lit up with speculation. Commenters dissected her parenting. Accusations of jealousy, of regret, of sabotage, all based on subtext. Subtext she didn't write. Subtext she couldn't control.
And if there's one thing Chelsy Davy never wanted, it was to become a character in someone else's story.
Especially not one where she's cast as the weak link. So here we are, with a woman who refused the Duchess title, who chose a private life, who endured scrutiny and silence, now stepping into one of the most public courtrooms in the country. Endnote. Not as a royal appendage, not as a nostalgic footnote, but as a plaintiff. Her claim that Prince Harry, in pursuit of his own redemptive narrative, defamed her by implication, that his public framing, across interviews, in his book, and through strategic silences, constructed a false version of her character, and that the damage to her business, her reputation, her peace, if not measurable,